Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
Midway USA has an extensive selection of bullets, providing top-notch performance and accuracy for the cartridge you plan on reloading. If you plan to hunt, shoot competitively, plink at the range, or even load up some self-defense rounds, Midway USA has the popular brands, calibers, diameters, and grain weights of bullets you are searching for. First-time reloaders, bulk bullet buyers, and seasoned specialty shooters begin their search for bullets at Midway USA. For just about everything for reloading, shop midwayusa.com.
Sitting up there jacked with Pepsi.
I'm there for the pack out. You just got to pack me in.
Committed to the bow early on. Like, I love getting close and putting up.
You cover a range of stuff on here too, right? Like,
we call this the THP World Headquarters.
You know, my grandpa Roy Weatherby.
I came into like that golden little pocket where there was like 4 or 5 different bowls. Just.
You're Canadian? We're doing a Canadian podcast.
My name's Douglas Rose.
I'm Robbie Denning.
Roy Candy. Hey, family first.
Yeah, you got to keep the wife happy, man. Got to do it sometimes. For sure. So, hey, buddy, thanks for hopping on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we kind of were chatting back and forth through Instagram there. It looks like you're one heck of an outdoorsman.
Trying to get out as much as possible.
Yeah, no. Why don't for our listeners, we haven't had you on the show yet. Why don't you just give us a quick just elevator intro on kind of who you are and kind of how you got introduced to the outdoors?
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go. Well, I'm born and raised out east, Halifax, Dartmouth area. Grew up fishing and seeing the outdoors and fishing as food, and then I ended up doing a master's focused in nutrition and looked at food sustainability, and that's about the time that I figured out hunting would probably be a good lifestyle for me. Like I said, I was always fishing for food, so when I started getting of the age where I had to buy all my own meat, I was like, why are the good cuts so expensive? And then you learn there's only so many on each animal, and then you learn, well, wouldn't it be nice if I could just get a whole animal for myself? And then came hunting, and my obsession for hunting set off very quickly.
Man, that's awesome. So you're also a wrestling coach, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I was a wrestler till I was 29, competing internationally, traveling all over the world, really. And
oh shit.
Yeah, I lived a dream in a lot of ways, and then now I'm continuing to try and live each day like it was my dream. And so I went from, being on the national team, traveling the world, competing all over against the baddest dudes from each country in arguably the toughest sport in the world. And then it's over. And then you say, who am I? What am I about? And so I just dove right into things like hunting and fishing and the outdoors, because all of a sudden I had this abundance of time I wasn't used to having, and decided to spend it doing the best thing I could think of.
Yeah, no doubt. So when did you start wrestling? I imagine in high school.
Yeah, I started, probably when I was like 14, 15, junior high age. And it was just a school sport for me starting out. I mean, I played every sport I could. And then I met a coach in high school who took me into his club and just kind of opened a lot of doors from there and inspired me to be a coach one day, which I am now. I coach all ages now. I coach 4-year-olds all the way up to 32-year-olds. I have an elementary program 4 to 12. I have a middle school and high school training center where we train all the kids in our school division and the surrounding school divisions in Southern Alberta. That's called Lethbridge Amateur Wrestling Association. And then I started another society called Pronghorn Amateur Wrestling Association that serves the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns.
Yeah, that's badass. I know, like, so why did you said it was over like, with a snap of fingers? Why was that? Like, was it something you like? Couldn't you have gone into like more of like a mixed martial arts? Like I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast quite a bit, and he talks about wrestlers moving from wrestling. You know, they go through the same thing. They fight or they wrestle internationally, go to the Olympics, and then they kind of transition into MMA. And one thing he says is that wrestling is like, if you're a wrestler moving into like mixed martial arts, it's a lot easier than like a boxer trying to move into mixed martial arts, because like wrestling is like, if he said if you can wrestle, you can fight. And I know, like, man, you guys are bad dudes, man. You see you guys rolling around the mat there, like, man, I know, just like rolling around with my buddies and my brothers growing up, man, it's tough. Like, and to do it professionally, like it's something else.
Yeah, they say it's arguably the toughest sport in the world.
Yeah, I believe it.
But I'll speak to, like, I guess what there's a few questions in there to unpack, but they're good ones. I would say my pathway would not be to fight MMA. I'm a bit of a purist in the sense that, like, I eat, sleep, and breathe wrestling, hunting, and fishing. But I do believe that all wrestlers would make excellent fighters. And to be honest, some of the best fighters in the world are some of my buddies and training partners through wrestling. I mean, like the Henry Cejudos, the people like that. I've sat at a dinner table having tacos in Guadalajara, Mexico, across the table from that guy.
Awesome.
Like, I used to go down and train in Jersey and met Chad Mendez down there before he even fought, before he hunted. He was fighting back then before he hunted and was as famous as he is now. Same with Henry. He was just an Olympic champ. He was our hero in our realm, but he hadn't won his 2 titles in the UFC yet. But I wouldn't say that, like, the natural progression for a wrestler would be to graduate wrestling and make their way to MMA. I think that it's a great way to leverage your popularity and make an income if you are lucky enough to be popular in a sport like wrestling. Many people don't realize, like, 182 countries wrestle, but for example, only a few play hockey, like the ones with ice and snow and ice arenas. So it's like one of the most popular sports in the world. And so these guys build up a lot of fame, some of them, especially the Olympic champs, the greats in our sport. And I wouldn't say I was famous enough to fill seats to do MMA. And you probably couldn't pay me enough to get punched in the head anymore.
Yeah, that's a rough way to make a living.
I want to hunt sheep. I want to hunt sheep and elk, and until I can't walk anymore, getting punched in the head for a living might challenge that.
I like your choice better.
Although sometimes when you're halfway through a hard sheep hunt, you feel like you're being punched in the head multiple times.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So a little bit more about wrestling, because I'm fascinated by this stuff. I'm fascinated by people who are in a position, they take something, they have a dream or they set goals and they just like keep working and they just live their dream, right? They set goals and they achieve them. And to me, there's no more, like, to me, that's the definition of success. If you set a goal and you work hard to achieve it, doesn't matter what your goal is. It could be a small goal, right? Then that's being successful. And like, I love on your Instagram, when I first clicked onto it the first time, it says, I don't believe anything worth doing is easy. I just love that. That's one of my favorite quotes of all times. And I tell that to my kids daily. So they're probably sick of hearing it, but man, it just doesn't ring. It couldn't ring any truer. So with wrestling, you mentioned there's 182 countries that wrestle?
Yeah, something like that. It varies. 184, 182. Some countries split into 2 and become 2 countries, and but it's in the 180s. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because like you look at the popularity of like and the money that's in like a sport of like, say, hockey, right? Like you said, there's not a lot. I mean, there's quite a few countries that play hockey, but not a lot, not 182, I'm sure. And then you look at like how, like look at the financial benefits of like being a top end athlete in hockey compared to like wrestling, say. And you think of like, if you think about how far back wrestling goes, man, it goes back all the way back to Roman times when they were wrestling in, well, I don't know if the Romans did it, but I'm sure the Greeks did it. They probably, or the Greeks were more of, I think, with the ball type. Maybe the Romans, I think, were the ones who were doing wrestling. But you think of how far back that history goes, and it's like, it's funny that there's not like a professional, like it's not monetized as much as those other sports when you think of how actually present it is in all these countries and how popular it is worldwide, considering, you know, it's an Olympic sport, which to me, I mean, the pinnacle of all sports is the Olympics, as far as I'm concerned, right? That's, I mean, you're competing at a world stage. I mean, there's nothing like it. Did you ever try to go for the Olympics or
Yeah. I have a few things to unpack about it. And you know, wrestling's my first love. It's my passion. It's wrestling was kind of the gift that keeps on giving in my life. It's given me most things that I know in life, and it's never left me. And I get out of it what I put into it. And it was taught to me as a metaphor for life. Just you talked about wrestling being very old, and I think that's why I love it. It's right there with hunting and fishing. It's as old as man, you know. And the Greeks definitely wrestled. You know, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, these Greek philosophers, they got cauliflower ear, you know. Like they were taught wrestling father to son throughout the ages, and the oldest countries are usually the best ones at wrestling. Like I've spent time in like Baku and Azerbaijan, and in the like on the edge of the Caspian Sea, spending time at their Olympic training center, and wrestling is, you know, as popular or more popular than hockey. And these guys are signing in $1 million contracts, and in Iran and India and these heavily populated countries, it's huge. Like when I went to Russia, the wrestlers are on the billboards in Russia. Like it's the highest regard sport. Yeah. It's a hard lens to, like, it's a hard thing for people to realize. Even the NCAA wrestlers are famous. You know, I remember going to Penn State and training there a few times. And my first time there, I didn't know their team from a hole in the ground. If I'm being honest, it was just a place my coach took me. I knew the training would be solid because he was solid, and we believed in the program. And we got there, and I remember not beating everybody up. I had some really tough matches with some good wrestlers. And I remember in the shower after looking at my teammate being like, "Hey man, like, did you get beat up today too?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so back then we had to get to the hotel room to Google them, because our phones weren't smartphones back then. And we get to the hotel and we look them up on Twitter, and they have 40,000 followers a piece. Holy These smokes. Guys were wrestling. We're like, holy smokes, they're the best in the country. We didn't even know because we didn't follow them. But in their local town, everybody knew them. And as soon as they saw us, "What are you guys here to wrestle with the team?" Yeah. Like even at any store, we couldn't go get groceries without somebody knowing that we were wrestlers and that we were there to wrestle their wrestling team. And they'd tell you every point that was ever scored in the last year by some of them. And they're fanatical fans about it. And so I think it's just the lens you look at it through, you know, like there's a YouTube video of me wrestling an Indian. It has almost 500,000 hits. It's a popular sport, just not so much in Canada. So it's hard for people to fathom.
The North America, I guess it never. I guess I wonder if that has anything to do with like the WWE. You know, or I guess at the time it was WWF. It's WWE now, I'm pretty sure. But I wonder if that has anything to do with the popularity of actual honest wrestling, compared to just like entertainment wrestling.
Yeah, it definitely stole some thunder. But MMA's been great for wrestling in North America, I'll be honest, because I remember like I got my first cauliflower ear, and if you don't know what that is, that's like a hematoma of the ear where you break your ear over and over again, and the skin separates from the cartilage, fills up with fluid, and then hardens. And
the only thing I know about cauliflower ears, if you know somebody with them or you see somebody with them, don't fuck with them. Yeah, just
and that's awesome for us that you hear that. But I remember when people didn't know what it was before MMA sensationalized it in North America. Like when I was 16, and I was going to say, like, you get one on your dominant side usually first, because you always lead that side of your head when you're attacking somebody, and usually it happens from hitting their hips. not from getting hit on the mat or in there, like getting punched in the ear. Generally, it's from like, if you can picture a football tackle with your head to the side, it's usually you using your head like a battering ram in good positions that causes it. So like I can always tell when I look at a guy with cauliflower, I can usually tell which hand is dominant just by a glance at his head. And I know which leg I'm not going to lead, probably, because that would be the one they're going for majority of the time. So I remember being like 16, going to my first MMA fight at the Halifax Forum to watch like an old teammate. They were the big shows fighting MMA. And I remember, when you're nervous, you're a young guy in the washroom and everybody's chit chatting. My mom dropped me off alone. So I was at this big MMA venue all alone. And I think I was 15 or 16. And I got stopped, and on my way out of the bathroom, guys were like, "Hey, dude, check this guy's collie out." The next thing I know, there's 20 guys giving the MMA pose next to me, trying to get photos with me, just because I had this big cauliflower hanging off my head.
So
I remember.
So does it hurt? Like,
recognized.
Does the cauliflower ears, do they hurt? Like, does it ever bug you if it's cold or anything like that?
Well, now no. Like now they're numb? It's no different than a regular ear. I can feel soft, but it's just a tougher ear. But when it originally happens, absolutely. Like when it's still soft. I drained one of my athlete's ears this week. Actually, you just get a needle and syringe and you stick it in. You're kind of trying to pull the swelling out of it while keeping it clean, because they'll harden whatever size they stay at. When my first one, it was like a golf ball inside my ear of fluid, but then it hardened, so now they're hard as rock, like or hard as cartilage.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy, man. Yeah, so yeah, I was always wondering that, because you see guys with them, and I always just wonder, like, I wonder if that hurts. So if they're a little more sensitive every time you get hit there, or if they develop like they're a little stronger, like a callus.
Yeah, it's more like a callus, I would say. Yeah. They hurt like hell when it happens originally. It's like I say, it's like breaking a nose, but the fluid stays like in there, so you get that hot burning swelling feeling, kind of like water on the knee. Yeah, I remember like playing hockey and stuff, and Pete and I both played fairly competitive hockey, and we played against each other, but didn't last too long. I had to lay Pete out, I think, when we were pretty young. Put him on his ass, set him straight.
First and only time.
Anyway, but like you get like a puck or a stick in the lip, and it's the same thing, right? It gets really hard and it hurts like hell, and eventually after it goes away. Now in the lip, they do go down a bit, but you can still feel, like I've gotten some pretty nasty ones, and you can still feel like inside of it, it's like a heart, it's like a little rock in there, but
yeah. I got a few of those myself.
Yeah, I bet you do, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's crazy. So anyway, back to the Olympics. Did you ever try for the Olympics, or was that ever a goal of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. At a young age, I set that goal. So the road to the Olympics for a wrestler is extraordinarily more difficult than people could ever imagine. I mean, like I said, 182 countries do it, and only 16 countries qualify for the Olympics. So only 16 out of those 182 get in. So you have to be the top 16 in the world just to qualify your country a spot. So being number one in your country is not near enough. You have to go to qualification events. And what they do is they reserve there's regional qualifications. So the Pan Americas, North, South, and Central America, they get 2 spots reserved out of that 16 for those countries. So if your country's top 8 in the World Championships the year before, then your country gets a spot. And if you're number one in your country, you sit in that spot and you go to the Olympics. And then then there's 2 for Pan Americas. There's 2 for Asia. Then there's, it cycles around, and each quadrennial it's a little bit different. But when I went through, there were 2 spots for the Pan Americas that I had to qualify in, because nobody from Canada placed top 8 at the World Championships the year prior to the Olympics, and that was me. I didn't qualify, and then the closest I came at the Pan Am qualifier was 5th. So if I had made the final, I would be an Olympian.
Crazy, man. That must be like you said, just extremely difficult.
Well, it's 4 years between them, so you make that commitment. I wrestled that
and that's the thing,
event twice. So and then I tried to try the Olympic trials in Canada. I wrestled that 3 or 4 times. So it's 4 years each time of commitment, of every bit of being you have inside you, your entire existence has to revolve around it, because if you don't, someone else's will. And wrestling, I can run over and over again. I'm not going to be Usain Bolt. I'm not built for it. I'm not as tall. My foot's not the right size for this length of my shank. Like, I don't have those genetic predispositions to being a sprinter. But I know in wrestling, I can put my heart and soul into it, and I get out of it what I put into it. And that's one of the reasons I love wrestling so much.
Yeah, I love that saying, you get out of it what you put into it, man. And that just rings true with so much you do in life. If you're going to commit to something, go all in. Man, that's cool.
Hunting's a lot like that. I think that's
absolutely
one of the things I love about hunting. It's frustrating that there's so much luck involved for me, because I want to work for it and earn it all the time, and then sometimes you get back to the truck and a buck walks out.
I think that can happen with everybody, but I think definitely
it's
when
all
you put in.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Pete. Anyway, I was going to say, it's all how you look at it, right? Because if you weren't doing all that work before, you wouldn't have been at that point at that exact time. So, I mean, really, if you weren't putting in all that work, doing all these other things, you wouldn't have been in that exact place at the exact time. You wouldn't have that opportunity. So, it's all in perspective.
You're separating yourself for every other time that's there by putting all that time and effort into it, which, my hats are off to anybody who can do that in any sport. It's
so you're from Halifax. Did you do any hunting out there? Sorry, you said you were fishing out there primarily.
Yeah, so while I was training, I started to do a lot of introspection, a lot of reflection, and I'd spend a lot of time outdoors, like between every wrestling session. I was going to university and enjoying doing that in my master's. But I spent a lot of time on the water, and then got into fly fishing because I liked the top water fishing. I thought fly fishing, they only fish on top, I thought, but that couldn't be further from the truth. But then so I was just fishing all the time. I remember I had some training partners who were great wrestlers, and one of them was a lifetime hunter from a family of hunters. I wasn't. And he said to me, he goes, every bit that you love fishing, when you start hunting, it'll be tenfold. He called it first, And he says, you got to do it. You got to try it. So I had gone out on a hunt one time with an old guy who's a lifetime hunter, and he kind of showed me the way. It just came to me naturally. And I remember him telling me about, he was a realtor, and he used to sell homes to save up enough money to get out to Alberta to do sheep hunts. And he was telling me about horseback riding into the mountains and shooting across canyons at mule deer and trying to get sheep. And he had never got one. And he's almost 80 now. He's quite old, still running marathons, like earning every day. And he inspired me. And I just had this opportunity where I just not qualified for the Olympics. I just had some stuff go on in my life that I needed to change. And I swear it was not a month after my first hunt and him telling me about Alberta, I uprooted my entire life and moved to Alberta to wrestle, but also to have another kick at the can with a different program. But to be honest, I could have went anywhere, and I came to Alberta to hunt.
That's awesome,
man. That's cool. Yeah. I was wondering, I didn't like Halifax. I'm trying to picture how much hunting would be out in Halifax. I just didn't think of a lot, but I know like the fishing. I grew up on the coast. Pete spent some time out there too, and I grew up. We did lots of fishing, man. Ocean, river, fly fishing, tons of that. Like we did it all. It's such a great way to live, and it's a great introduction, like you said, to the outdoors. And then, whether you choose to hunt or to keep fishing, or a lot of guys I know they do both, but. Yeah, man, it's always been, when I was younger, I have to admit, I think I had a bigger passion for fishing, but as I gotten older and I moved down here and we started, I remember the first introduction to elk hunting and I was just blown away. Like that bull screamed at me. I couldn't get enough of it. And I still can't. So, man, that's like you uprooted, moved to Alberta, and like you've just been getting after it ever since.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I moved there, I didn't have any mentors. I didn't even own a rifle. had never hardly ever shot a bow. My uncle had taken me to the fire hall or something to shoot bows as a kid a little bit, and I remember that vividly, and fondly. But yeah, no, I just kind of cut my teeth as I went, and I'll be like, being a wrestler, it's like a very difficult thing to do. Hey, like like I keep saying, it's arguably one of the hardest sports, and so with it came a lot of lessons that I literally just started applying to other parts of my life. Find somebody who's as obsessed with it as you, who's been doing it longer, and surround yourself with them, and pick their brains. And if you're at the range, shoot next to them, and ask them what's going on, and just be like a sponge for knowledge, and work hard each day. So now I find if I'm not coaching a wrestling practice at 6 a.m. like I am tomorrow, I'm at the range shooting the bow, or studying some research articles. I was a grad student, so I like to read a lot of research, and I try to learn as much as I can about each species, and I'm just obsessed with it, because you don't have enough hours in a lifetime to know everything about these things I'm obsessed with: wrestling, hunting, and fishing. Hey, they're as old as time, and you'll never know it all. And I just get obsessed with trying to absorb as much as possible.
Yeah, I remember a really great hunter told me once when we were talking about mule deer, and he said, I remember asking him, I was like, well, do you ever think you'll know as much as the mule deer? And he's like, it's impossible, because the more I know, the more they know, and they've been avoiding us a lot longer. We've been trying to get them. But yeah, man, that's super cool. Oh, mule deer, I love mule deer. Yeah, we hunted a lot of blacktail, and like my dad, he was primarily a moose hunter, and so as a kid, you'd go moose hunting with him and my uncles, and in 5 days they'd get 5 moose type of thing. I mean, it's not like that anymore, but yeah, and so I just when I moved down to south here, I just fell in love with chasing elk and mule deer. I don't know what it is, and I know you and I were talking before about sheep and sheep hunting, and I did quite a bit of sheep hunting and goat hunting. For me, to be honest, if you said, hey, you get to go on a sheep hunt or a goat hunt, which one would you choose? I'd take goat hunting over sheep hunting.
Why is that?
I don't know. I to be honest, I just prefer chasing those beautiful white goats than I do. Like, what fascinates me about goats, and like, don't get me wrong, sheep get into some pretty gnarly stuff as well, but like growing up on the coast, you see some of those places that those goats get, and it blows your mind away. Like, absolutely blows your mind away. Like, we'd be hunting, you could be traveling down the coast in a boat, and you see them up on these cliffs that you literally look like you'd have to fly in to get there, or somebody would have to drop them off, and like they're just sitting up there, just doing their thing. And like, I was always just like fascinated with them, and like how they get to these places where they go, and still to this day, and like we have them. They're fascinating creatures, man. Like, you think like they live down here in the desert where it's 35-40 degrees, and we see them down here, and it just blows my mind how tough and versatile those things are. And man, don't get me wrong, I mean, sheep are awesome too in their own right. But like we were talking back and forth there before we got on the show. I just, now all I care, all I just really passionate about is elk hunting, and like it's bucks and bulls for me. But let's talk a little bit about like yourself there. So when did you first get into sheep hunting? Was it something that you got into right away, or was it like when you moved here, moved to Alberta, it was just kind of an evolution? You started with like whitetail, then you moved into chasing mule deer, then elk, and then you kind of up the ladder all the way to sheep.
Yeah, I mean, I came out with the idea to sheep hunt, but didn't know what that meant at all. And it was for whatever reason, it was very important for me to try and do it on my own. Okay, like I wasn't looking to hire a guide and get out there, which I would encourage people to probably do, because it would give you a kick in the arse to just get out and go, or to grab onto somebody else who goes regularly, because you would have skipped a whole bunch. Like you and I had talked before. I think Derek had a post about stuff he brings, and the idea is just get out. Mm-hmm. Just get out. Yeah. So, like, I was obsessed with gear, and I think you hit it on the head. I started off with the whitetail locally. I was in Edmonton when I first moved here, and I still had a lot of commitments for work. I had to earn a living, and I just moved out west with no family, no backup plan, no support other than from my wrestling program I was wrestling for. And and none of them were hunters, so they didn't really get why I was working hard all week to work and wrestle, and then leave on a weekend to hike my lungs out up and down the mountains in the pursuit of animals I was going to eat. It was just a foreign concept to them. But eventually you bring a couple deer home and hang them off your apartment balcony in Edmonton in the alley, and you turn a few heads, eh? And then the boys help me cut up the meat, and then they're trying it, and eventually some of them now are getting their pals and going hunting just because they like the meat so much. And but awesome. The evolution, I started, so I was in Edmonton, I would go to like Wilmore and just hike as far as I could on a weekend. I used to carry a raft with me in case I killed something, I was going to float it back to the truck. And, I'd be out on the Kevis Flats and hiking. And I remember guys on horseback being like, are you camping around here? And be like, yeah, I'm just wherever I get, I'm going to camp. And I remember them being like, all alone? I'd be like, yeah. And they'd be like, I imagine they took one look at me and knew I was greener than grass and were a little concerned for my well-being because I just started going. I didn't have the stuff.
Yeah, they probably looked at you and seen your ears, and they're like, "I bet you this guy got his head rang too many times."
I do get that.
Way back, yeah, he's way back here. He must be crazy.
Yeah, that's the way they looked at me, and they had the funniest questions, like, "Are you good?" And I'd be like, "I think so," but their concern would always make me question it.
Yeah.
But like even when I was fishing, I was fly fishing the rivers, like famous salmon rivers like the Miramichi River for Atlantic salmon, and back home our salmon populations are pretty low. They're in endangered or at-risk species, and handling them is only the guides handle them. Even when you catch them, they hold them for the photo, that type of thing, and everybody's taking extra care of them, and it's a lot like the sheep. Here, like it's it's an expensive weekend to go to a lodge and fish Atlantic salmon where I'm from. But us locals would just like take a 5-day canoe trip and take everything to the extreme that we could. And so I just hit the ground running, taking everything to the extreme. But I didn't know what I didn't know, man. If I could have done it all over again, I would have just started hiking mountains like I do now. And I accumulated the gear and confidence over time. It felt like every time I went out, I was going a little further because you get that, they call it wanderlust, but it's more like just a competence thing in my mind. The more competent I got, the more confident I got in my abilities to, I'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's that mental toughness you have too, that you've developed over a lifetime of working hard. And like you said, you're earning it every single day. And like a lot of hunting and like wrestling and a lot of this too is like mentally tough, and like knowing that if you just work harder, if you work hard every day, that you're going to get the results. And you might not get it. It's not going to be instant. It's not going to be instant gratification, but you trust the process where it's like with your wrestling, if you worked hard, you're going to see the results. Like you said, you maybe didn't have the perfect build or physique for something or something else, but with wrestling, you knew what you put into it, you're going to get out of it. And like you said, hunting's the same way. If you're fully committed and you're really willing to work hard and you're willing to, fall down, make mistakes, get up again, and not be afraid to keep doing it, you're going to be successful over time. Eventually it's going to happen, right? But you have to, just like your wrestling career, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be an evolution.
Yeah. And, I think like I wasn't at first hunting the way I am now. Like I said, wrestling was a commitment. And then I went through this, this transition where I retired from wrestling. My old man had passed away. He slipped on ice, hit his head at work, had an accident and passed away randomly. And then I retired from wrestling in the same year and went through a bit of an identity crisis, as anybody who's ever lost a major business or ever invested, put all their eggs in one basket and then failed or came out unsatisfied. Retirement, it's tough no matter how you look at it, no matter what it is. And when your identity's wrapped up in it, it's even harder. And so I went through this lull, this low point. I was dating a girl down here in Lethbridge. And so I decided in my retirement that I'd move down here rather than ask her to move up there for my commitments. They kind of fell through. So I was like, well, I hear the South has good mule deer hunting. So So I decided to uproot my life again and move down here to the south, with a commitment to try and make a family and make something of it. And I spent the first year, almost a full year of that time, where like my life didn't revolve around wrestling, and I needed a replacement. And I kind of avoided wrestling for the first bit. Actually, when I moved here, it was kind of a low point in my life. I did like kind of a vision quest where for the first month I was here, I didn't even look for work. I just grabbed my bow and left and hunted mule deer for like a whole month. I just lived in my truck and chased mule deer, and I think I got more experience with a bow chasing mule deer in that month than most guys would, in many years, I would imagine, of going on weekends. It was just, I lived out there with them and chased the same deer every day from opening day until I got them at the end of the month. And then it went right from there to whitetail and elk. And I basically spent that entire season not working and just hunting. And it was the best time of my life.
Oh, I bet. I know when I remember I talked to a few guys that study mule deer, and they say the same thing. They're like, man, if you think you know mule deer, go spend a month in the mountains with them, and then you'll really know them. So, that's something obviously I've never done. I've never been able to do it. I have other commitments, but man, the knowledge you must have gained is worth a lifetime.
I would say, like, with the bow, that was the first target, because where I grew up. So you're asking about the hunting back home. Well, we have whitetail and black bear, but I had never seen a mule deer. I didn't even know what a mule deer was till I moved out here and learned about them being divided in the Ice Age, and they're just bigger and cooler, and then to hunt them out on the Badlands and the prairie where there's rattlesnakes and cactus. It was like being on another planet from where I'm from, man. Like, the Atlantic coast is so foreign to what the landscape is like here. And so every day I was just out there trying to figure out myself, but also how to get these freaking deer. And I remember, like, it was such a profound experience when I finally arrowed the deer that I had named. Like, actually, my ex-girlfriend now had a name for that deer before we had ever met, and had told me about this deer. And then opening day, I spotted him, and I knew it was him. Sent her a photo of him, and yeah, that's the one they call tulip head, because when he lays down in the sage, his antlers almost touched at the top. It looked like a tulip.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I had names for all the deer out on these properties because I had spent so much time with them, and they'd given me the slip. And you know how they change beds? Like, you'll spot them and then you'll dip out of sight, and they'll get up and they'll just move to a bed just outside of where you had last seen them, because they knew you saw them, but they didn't move, kind of like a frog doesn't. I remember catching frogs as a kid. They think you can't see them if they don't move. The mule deer do that to you out there. And then as soon as you drop out of sight and they know you're out of sight, well, they get up and change beds. And so you go sneak in on that bed and they're not there, and you're standing where they're supposed to be. And then you see them running away, and they're the blip on the horizon laughing at you. Oh, man, they used to drive me crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I've never hunted mule deer in the prairies. Like, I've hunted antelope and elk and other stuff. My brother actually lives in red deer, so I spent, a fair bit of time out there, probably not as much as I should, but it's a lot different hunting mule deer here in British Columbia, right? They're they like the thick stuff. They like, there's real, not goat country, but not far off. So they put themselves in places where they know they can get out of if they have to in case of predators. But yeah, they're such an amazing animal.
I read some research about their gait, making them so superior in steep country because they hop instead of run.
They
and
stop.
Then learning how they evade prey. And then like I think like out here on the prairie, it's almost sacrilege to hunt them with a rifle, because they just run out 100 yards, then turn back to see if you're chasing them, and you can just smoke them. It's even in our hunting manual, I think, that they do that. They give you the cheat code on day one, like, hey, if you're hunting them with a rifle, just wait. They'll turn around and look at you broadside. But with a bow, it's a worthy adversary. Like, they're hunting at not letting anything in their bubble.
Yeah, for sure. Especially those mature bucks. But yeah, Valerius Geis, he studied mule deer for a year, and he's written lots of books on literature. And And yeah, he talked about that. He talked about them over how they evolved into, being the ultimate predator evader in areas, steep areas where they can just avoid predators just by stotting. Yeah.
It was his research that I was referring to, actually.
Yeah. Hilarious guys. Yeah. What a great man. So what about elk? When did you first dive into elk, and what was that like?
Well, I I had my first year looking for elk was actually pretty wild. I had some, like I said, I seeked out mentors, and there was a guy in the wrestling community who owns his own outfitters, McNeese Outfitters, out of Cochrane, Alberta, just outside of Calgary. And anyway, there he was a friend of mine through wrestling. His sons wrestled during my time, and he was kind of a mentor, coach type guy to me, and an avid hunter, like pretty well known outfitter in the area. And he kind of convinced me, if your first elk hunt, like just apply for these numbers in the draw, and you'll get cow tags. And I didn't know anything about it at the time. I just said, "Oh, I want to hunt elk because elk's cool." So I took his advice and ran with it and got 2 cow tags. And I remember the opening weekend, because it was a late season cow tag, I couldn't really hunt them. But opening weekend, I went to the Wilmore and was just still hunting and saw some. I'd stopped on the edge of a river and saw some cow elk butts and decided to stalk in there. And I was this was so funny. I had one of those candle, or like the scents you light, like it's on the stick and it burns. And I tucked it into the back of my hat. I'll never forget it, so that I could see which way the wind was going.
Oh, okay.
And I walked, and you smell, and it covered my smell, I thought. But now I don't think about making myself stinky anymore. I don't think that works. But at the time, I was like wearing it kind of like a feather in the cap. And I stalked in there on the creek, and I had perfect wind, and I walked in, and I was trying to get on these cows again. And next thing I know, one picked its head up, and it hit we had just had a fresh snowfall. And when she hit it, the snow all fell on her head, and she's chewing some cud or whatever. And then all of a sudden she barked at me, and all around me started to move. I didn't realize there was like 40-50 cows all around me.
You're in it.
Yeah. The middle of them, and they all started moving, and the snow started falling from the trees. And then this bull came out, this beautiful bull. I remember it was like my first day with a rangefinder. I had him at 40 yards, and he came out and snorted at me. It was first thing in the morning, the steam or the condensation coming from his nose. It's still painted and ingrained in my mind, like the most beautiful image. And I had nothing but late season cow tags in my pocket. And this legal bull in the Wilmore, and then it ran out across the river, and then held broadside on the edge of the river, looking back at me. I had it in the crosshairs. I remember like a single tear rolling down my cheek. I was like, "Why do I have freaking cow tags? Never again." And so I cried myself to sleep that night. But on my way out, I took a different route out and found a nice moose shed, my first one ever, laying in the river. And only because I went out that way, and I said, well, that was my consolation for passing on a bull.
Man, that's awesome. That's a good experience. Not very often, especially cows. Like, it's not easy to sneak into a group of cows, man.
Not
sure.
That many, especially. Like, yeah.
Well, still hunting is still to this day pretty much the only way I like to hunt. Like I'm obsessed with still hunting. I have a bit of a touch of the ADHD. So I struggle to sit, man. I have infinite stories where I'd sit and rattle, and then be bored 10 minutes later, get up and start walking, and there's a buck on his way
that was
in
coming into your row. Yeah. We've all done that. Yeah, that's painful. I've done that so many times, and be like, well, nothing's coming in. Turn around and be like, oh.
Yeah, I literally did that with a buddy this year. We were both like, man, I can't sit. And he's like, me neither. He's like, this is why we don't tree stand hunt. And we turned around, and a buck was on his way in.
Yeah, for sure. I like still hunting. To me too is like, man, like I love like spot and stalks the way I love spot and stalk. Still hunting, I find I have a really hard time just like finding a good pace, because I find like I always start out slow, but then I just like creep up faster and faster and faster. Yeah. I have to really, like, I have a hard time still hunting where I could, like, my cadence would just be like Pete is like perfect at it. Like just like 2 steps, stop, glass. Like he's just like chill out there. Like the
Yeah, I
Iceman.
think I hunt differently depending on the species. Hey, like obviously, but like I usually will kind of still hunt to where I want to be, or still hunt in a certain area that I've targeted on when I'm scouting. And then, and then you sit in glass like to spot and stock from different areas. So I kind of time my day out based on their activity. In the morning, I'll probably be up high glassing, drinking my morning coffee. And then as it heats up and everything goes to bed, I'll still hunt through their bedding area. Depending on how the land is, kind of dictates how you are. One of my favorite quotes, I wish I knew who originally said it, but it was Stephen Ranella. I heard say it, but he says that the animals are instruments played by their landscape. And when I posted something that said that once, and one of my biologist friends kind of commented that they look at it differently in their studies, is that the landscape doesn't dictate the animals kind of shape the landscape. But I think they're looking at it over time, and I'm looking at it to hunt the animal.
Hey, for sure.
There's certain areas that like are going to have consistent wind. There's certain areas that are going to swirl. And one of the things I learned hunting elk was that a lot of times when they bed up, they'll bed up in these micro chasms where as soon as you drop elevation from anywhere, it's going to swirl, and they're going to have their best guess of which way it's coming from, which they won't know. Sometimes they'll run right at you to get out of there if you're in their exit, but they'll usually have a few different routes and just pick one as soon as they smell something's wrong, and they get out of there. So they're impossible to stalk in on when they're bedded sometimes, because they'll only bed in those areas.
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely they definitely use their habitat to their advantage for sure. So like you're down in Lethbridge, you hunt sheep where can you hunt sheep in Alberta? Do you have to go north to hunt sheep, or can you hunt can you hunt Rockies along the Canmore?
I will get crucified for talking about where to hunt sheep by my peers.
Well, I mean, like, where is it? Yeah, where is it open there?
Well, for a resident in Alberta, so that's the other thing why I became why I moved here, was because residents get a general sheep tag for the Bighorn, so we can hunt anywhere that you can hunt. We have like an infinite amount of crown land in my mind. There's more crown land here, I think, than the entire province of Nova Scotia when you're talking acreage,
which is crazy to think of, because like when we think of like being from BC, when we think of Alberta, we think of it primarily being farmland, same as Saskatchewan, but there is a lot of crown land there. There's a lot of public access land there too. I was just wondering, so is there Californias out there in Alberta, or are they all Rockies?
No, I don't think we have Californias. I know that I've seen some in BC on that side when I've driven through. There's some like micro areas that I believe.
Yeah, like down where I am, we have sheep, on both sides of the lake. There is an LEH where you can put in where they give out LEH tags, but it's not open here. You have to go a little further north and inland for it to be open. But yeah, primarily, I mean, but we also have Dall sheep, Stones, Rockies, and Bighorn. We have all 4 species.
Oh, I know. Here. You guys are the mountain destination. I'm going to be hunting in BC here soon. You watch. But we kind of have Bighorn, like you can hunt as low as Lethbridge. On the scale all the way up. Because Montana has them too. So there's a nice little we like in the grizzly corridor, as they call it sometimes in some circles, there's quite a bit of sheep moving up and down those mountains.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
Interesting.
Were you gonna say something, Pete?
No, that's interesting, because I was wondering the same thing. Trying to picture exactly, not up your No-Telly Creek secret spot kind of deal, but in general, I was picturing it actually being a little farther north than south when it came to hunting them. That's all.
Yeah, I guess along the Rocky Mountains, the border, like along Canmore, I mean, that's got to be, prime Rocky Mountain sheep territory, because that's, that's right through the Rocky Mountain, like the edge of the Rocky Mountain corridor there.
Have you heard of the Waterton Lakes National Park?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, there was a like a world-renowned bighorn that was hanging out in that park, and that's south close to the border here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's even further south than I am. So that it's like an hour and a half from where I'm living right now. So that I mean, it's very accessible to Albertans all up and down. So they and then you have the parks that kind of have them protected, but then we have our wilderness parks and then the crown land that all surrounds it, and it's pretty awesome hunt.
Yeah,
See, a lot of our sheep just went LEH all along our side. I'm on the other side of the border, like right on the edge of it. I'm in Invermere. So,
okay.
Yeah, so very close to, like, as far as the crow flies, you're just straight across from Calgary, basically, but in the mountains. But yeah, everything south, for whatever reasons, they just put them all on LEH, but it was general in those areas for the longest time.
Yeah, up until the last synopsis.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about goats. I've seen a lot of goats in the last year, especially on my sheep hunts.
Really?
Which is great to see on our side, like a lot of goats. I mean, when I was in Fernie, there was tons when I was out there fishing, but I've been fishing the Old Man River system down here and had goats and kids with babies like the right above me on the river, because it's all cliffed in on the rivers. And I've been fly fishing along the cliffs and look up and there's goats right above me.
That's cool, man. When you do that, when you're sitting there fishing, fly fishing, you look up and you just see goats sitting up there looking at you, and not a care in the world, just looking at you like.
Sheep too. I woke up in the morning to go fly fishing out in those areas and had like 3 rams bedded up above me on a ledge, just awesome. Watching me fly fish. It was like an audience. Pretty cool.
So is there a goat season there? Is it like an LEH, or is it closed in all of Alberta?
There's a small zone that I'm aware of, and it's a lottery tag, and there's not very many of them given out. I'd like to see that change. Yeah, so most of our stuff's priority points, as you probably know. Yeah. Which I think is A1, if you ask me. I think that's much better. But the goat one's a lottery, and until they change it. But and there's only 2 spots, I think. Yeah,
that's interesting that they put that on a lottery system and the rest is priority points. I know, like, we have a lottery system here, and I am not a fan of the lottery system because, like, you have some guys who put into, they put in for some LEHs, and 20 years goes by and they never get it. And then you get some guys, you'll get a guy from Cranbrook who puts in for it, gets it, and doesn't go.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like they just, but I mean, that BC and its wildlife management, just everything is just, it's just a bloody mess. And I know, like I said, my brother lives out in Alberta, and I have a lot of friends out there, and Derek, he's out in Lethbridge, as you know, as well. But yeah, man, that's super cool. That's how about antelope? You ever chase antelope out there?
Not yet. That's a hard tag to get to.
Yeah, that's a 12-year tag or something, isn't it, out there?
Yeah, I'm sitting at 6 or 7 now. I've only been in Alberta that long, so
yeah.
So but I hope soon to get an archery tag or something for one of those, because I see them every time I'm out east. So I can go an hour and a half east, and I'm hunting mule deer and seeing antelope everywhere, and there's some pretty good whitetail hunting, if I'm being honest, out on the prairie too, in the agriculture areas, like where they're growing corn and stuff that's infested with them, and they're kind of out competing the mule deer. Even in my short period of time out here, the whitetail seem to be multiplying. But
yeah, we notice that everywhere. We notice that out here. Yeah,
hour and a half in the other direction, and I have a full curl sheep zone, and then on the edges, the foothills, or the ranch lands, there's the elk. So it's just like, to me, it's a pretty awesome playground.
Yeah, we're definitely blessed to be here in Western Canada and just have access to the animals that we have. I mean, we talk to a lot of guys, down in the lower 48, and when we get into talking, what we have, what we can go hunt just over the counter, they're just like, wow. Like, I mean, we can just go buy a over the counter goat tag or sheep, elk, and you have the ability to hunt literally, 3 different species of deer, bear, sheep, elk, and moose, and essentially it's the same in Alberta. And like, yeah, we're definitely pretty blessed.
Oh, I moved for it. So, I mean, I uprooted my whole life and ran the other side of the continent from anybody who ever knew or loved me for it. So if, you know, got to get in while the getting's good.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah. Ain't that truth? Unfortunately, for sure.
I have
Well,
no
buddy,
regrets
it's been
at
a,
this point.
yeah, awesome, man. It's been wicked catching up with you, dude. I'm glad, you know, this was kind of short notice and it was kind of a fumble on my time, the scheduling. So I appreciate your patience and thanks for coming on the show, buddy.
Hey, my pleasure.
Yeah. You got anything to add, Pete?
Oh, it's just always nice meeting people who are so dedicated to their passion, whatever that passion may be. So yeah, love talking to people that do what you're doing. It's great to meet new people doing it.
Yeah, and I love the quotes that you're throwing out there too. Earning every day, and you only get out of it what you put into it, and it's just like, yeah, that's, to me, it's inspiring to see other guys just going at it day in, day out, and finding success. So, you know, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, I hope to see you guys. Talk to you again.
Absolutely.
Okay, talk to you later, Pete.
You betcha.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
Gear up for the hunt and learn from the best with Deer and Deer Hunting Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV. Tune in every week for expert hunting tips and unforgettable moments in the field. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.